Imagine this. It's Christmas Eve, 1775. Just outside Boston, a brutal storm blankets the province, burying everything under a foot of snow. Temperatures plummet. For the soldiers of the nascent American army, this isn't a time for celebration. It's a fight for survival. Christmas Day is just as cold, another day of grim routine. By December 31st, General Nathaniel Greene is writing in despair. Nothing but confusion and disorder reign. His men are starving and freezing. They've burned every fence, every tree for a mile around camp. And they're still eating their rations raw, because there's no wood left to cook. This is the last day of service for many of the enlisted men. As Greene puts it, we have never been so weak as we shall be tomorrow. On New Year's Day, 1776, a different kind of storm hits the camp. Copies of a speech by King George III arrive from London. The king isn't offering an olive branch. He's accusing them of being traitors, of engaging in a rebellious war. He even hints at bringing in foreign mercenaries to crush them. Any flickering hope for a peaceful resolution is instantly extinguished. Across the camp, soldiers react with pure rage. They build bonfires and burn the king's speech in public defiance. This isn't just a protest anymore. It's a point of no return. Nathaniel Greene, once again, captures the mood perfectly. He writes to a congressman, "Heaven hath decreed that tottering empire Britain to irretrievable ruin. America must raise an empire of permanent duration." And then, he makes a bold, powerful plea. "Permit me then to recommend a Declaration of Independence." George Washington's reaction is just as profound. He's done trying to reason with a king he now sees as a tyrant. He writes that if the king and his government refuse to listen, then the colonies are determined to shake off all connections with a state so unjust and unnatural. And he wants to say it loud and clear, in words as clear as the sun in its meridian brightness. This New Year's Day marks a massive, chaotic turnover. As the contracts of the old soldiers expire, thousands begin to pack up and leave, right in front of the enemy. It looks like a disaster, but something incredible happens. A substantial number of men, the veterans who'd been there since the bloody Battle of Bunker Hill, decide to stay. Thousands of others who go home will re-enlist just a little later. In total, as many as 9,000 men from the old army choose to fight on. In his general orders, Washington announces the official birth of a new army, which in every point of view is entirely continental. For the first time, they have a name, the Continental Army. He reminds them that everything they hold dear as freemen is on the line. To mark the occasion, a 13-gun salute thunders across the frozen landscape. A brand new flag is raised high above the camp on Prospect Hill. It has 13 red and white stripes, but in the corner, it still features the British Union Jack. From their positions in Boston, the British see the new flag fluttering in the wind, and in a moment of supreme irony, they mistake it for a sign of surrender. They couldn't have been more wrong. The fight was just beginning. Now, let us talk about a piece of high ground that everyone knew was the key to the whole conflict. Dorchester Heights. This windswept hill overlooked Boston and its harbor. Whoever controlled it, controlled the city. From the very beginning, the British knew this. Their original plan, way back in June, was to seize both the Charlestown Peninsula, where Bunker Hill was, and Dorchester Heights. But the Americans beat them to it at Charlestown, forcing the British into that infamous, bloody battle. In the aftermath, a British general named Henry Clinton argued passionately that they needed to take Dorchester Heights immediately. He predicted, if the king's troops should be ever driven from Boston, it would be by rebel batteries raised on those heights. It was a chillingly accurate prophecy. But astonishingly, the British High Command did nothing. General Gage, and later his replacement General Howe, left the heights completely undefended. It was a massive, inexplicable blunder. And curiously, the Americans didn't make a move on it either. For months, Dorchester Heights remained a strategic no man's land. Both sides were keenly aware of its importance, but neither dared to make the first move. It was a ticking time bomb, sitting in plain sight, waiting for one side to find the courage and the audacity to act. The side that seized it would not just gain a tactical advantage, they would hold the fate of Boston, and perhaps the entire revolution, in their hands. The question was, who would it be? And when would they strike? The answer came in the dead of winter, born from a mind that brilliantly combined engineering with military strategy. Colonel Henry Knox, a 25-year-old former bookseller with a passion for artillery, had proposed a daring plan to Washington. Knox would travel 300 miles to the captured Fort Ticonderoga in upstate New York, retrieve the heavy cannons and mortar left there by the British, and haul them all the way back to Boston. It was an idea so audacious it bordered on insane. The journey would be through the Berkshire Mountains, in the middle of a brutal winter, with no established roads. He'd need to move nearly 60 tons of solid iron and brass, but Washington, desperate for heavy firepower, approved the mission. On November 17th, Knox set out on his epic journey. Throughout December and January, Knox and his men performed miracles. They used sleds pulled by teams of oxen to drag the massive cannons over frozen rivers, through deep snow, and up and down treacherous mountain passes. The men suffered from frostbite, exhaustion, and the sheer back-breaking labor of the task. There were moments it seemed impossible, like when a huge cannon plunged through the ice of the Mohawk River. But Knox refused to give up. He drove his men, and himself, relentlessly. By late January, against all odds, the impossible had been achieved. The noble train of artillery, as Knox called it, began to arrive in the American camp outside Boston. 59 pieces of heavy ordnance, cannons, cohorns, and mortar. The Continental Army finally had the firepower it so desperately needed. With Knox's cannons now in hand, Washington and his generals knew the moment had come. The target was Dorchester Heights, but how could they take the hill without alerting the British and getting blown to pieces before they could dig in? They needed a plan that was just as audacious as Knox's expedition. The idea was to move under the cover of darkness. They would secretly assemble thousands of troops and hundreds of ox carts, loaded with prefabricated fortifications, tools, and hay bales to muffle the noise. They would wait for a night with a full moon to give them just enough light to work. And to distract the British, Washington ordered a massive artillery bombardment of Boston from their existing positions in Cambridge and Roxbury for 3 consecutive nights. The barrage would be a diversion, creating a thunderous noise to mask the sounds of their real operation. On the night of March 4, 1776, the plan went into action, as American cannons roared, sending shells crashing into Boston. General John Thomas led a force of over 2,000 men silently toward Dorchester Heights. The ground was frozen solid, almost 2 feet deep, making traditional trench digging impossible. But they had a clever solution: large wooden frames and barrels filled with earth, which could be quickly assembled into formidable defensive walls. All through the night, thousands of men worked with a frantic, disciplined energy. They hauled carts, hoisted timber, and packed dirt, all while the British in Boston were hunkered down, thinking they were just weathering another noisy but ineffective bombardment. The sheer scale of the operation was breathtaking. By dawn, the impossible had happened again. The next morning, on March 5th, the British woke up to a sight that struck them with utter disbelief and horror. Overnight, 2 complete forts had materialized on Dorchester Heights, bristling with the very cannons the British had lost at Ticonderoga. An American general later wrote that the fortifications appeared so suddenly, it was as if they were the work of the genii of Aladdin's wonderful lamp. For the British General Howe, it was a nightmare realized. The American guns now commanded the entire city and the harbor where his fleet was anchored. He had 2 choices: order a suicidal frontal assault on the heavily fortified hill, or evacuate Boston. Remembering the slaughter his troops suffered at Bunker Hill, and with a storm brewing that would complicate any attack, Howe made his decision. He would withdraw. On March 17, 1776, the British evacuation began. Over 120 ships filled the harbor, taking on more than 11,000 British troops, sailors, and loyalist civilians. After 11 long months, the siege of Boston was over. It was a stunning, decisive victory for the Continental Army, achieved not through a bloody battle, but through brilliant strategy, incredible engineering, and sheer audacity. As the last of the British ships sailed away, Washington and his troops marched triumphantly into the city they had fought so long to liberate. The victory electrified the colonies and proved that the amateur American army could outwit and outmaneuver the most powerful military force on earth. The miracle of Dorchester Heights was a critical turning point, a testament to what courage and ingenuity could achieve in the face of overwhelming odds. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories from history.